Hey, level casters. Today's lesson takes us on a fascinating journey back in time to a truly world-changing event, the Russian Revolution. This wasn't just one big moment, but a series of dramatic changes that completely reshaped Russia and had a huge impact on the entire 20th century. Imagine a country where most people were very poor, working hard for very little, while a small group of nobles and the royal family lived in luxury. That was Russia at the beginning of the 20th century. The country was ruled by an emperor, called a Tsar, who had absolute power. His name was Nicholas II. Many people were unhappy with this system. They wanted more rights, better working conditions, and a fairer share of the country's wealth. The seeds of revolution were planted deep in this fertile ground of discontent. There were also many different groups with different ideas about how Russia should be governed. Some wanted a more democratic system, like in Western Europe, while others believed in more radical changes, like communism, where the state controls everything and wealth is shared equally. These ideas were circulating, especially among factory workers and some intellectuals. Life for ordinary Russians was tough. Many were farmers, called peasants, who lived simple lives and often struggled to grow enough food. The cities were growing, bringing more people into factories, where conditions were often dangerous and pay was low. This widespread unhappiness and the Tsar's refusal to make significant reforms created a very unstable situation. It was like a pot slowly boiling, and it was only a matter of time before it boiled over. We're going to explore how this happened, step by dramatic step. The first major tremor of change came in 1905. After Russia lost a war with Japan, protests erupted across the country. One famous event was Bloody Sunday, when peaceful protesters marching to the Tsar's palace were shot at by soldiers. This act of violence shocked many and severely damaged people's trust in the Tsar. Although the Tsar made some small promises, like creating a parliament called the Duma, he largely kept his power, and the fundamental problems remained. Fast forward to 1914, and Russia entered World War I. This decision proved disastrous. The Russian army was poorly equipped and suffered massive losses. Soldiers were sent to the front lines without enough weapons or even proper boots. At home, the war caused immense hardship. Food became scarce, and prices rose sharply. People were starving in the cities, and the economy was collapsing. The Tsar, Nicholas II, made things worse by taking personal command of the army, even though he had no military experience. This meant he was blamed directly for the defeats. Meanwhile, his wife, Tsarina Alexandra, was left to govern, and she relied heavily on an eccentric mystic named Rasputin, which further damaged the royal family's reputation. The war exposed the weaknesses of the Tsarist government and increased the anger of the people. Soldiers were tired of fighting a losing war, and civilians were tired of hunger and poverty. The government seemed unable to cope with the crisis. This period saw the rise of various political groups, including the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin. They promised peace, land, and bread, a powerful message that resonated with millions of suffering Russians. Their ideas, based on communism, offered a radical alternative to the existing system, promising a society where workers and peasants would control everything. By early 1917, the situation was critical. In February, women textile workers in Petrograd, St. Petersburg, went on strike, protesting food shortages. This sparked massive demonstrations, and soon, soldiers began to join the protesters instead of firing on them. The capital city was in chaos. The Tsar, seeing that he had lost the support of the army and the people, was forced to abdicate, meaning he gave up his throne. This was the end of over 300 years of Romanov rule in Russia. A provisional government was formed, made up of more moderate politicians, who tried to establish a democratic system. However, they made a critical mistake. They decided to continue fighting in World War I. This decision alienated many, especially the soldiers and workers who desperately wanted peace. At the same time, councils of workers and soldiers, called Soviets, were forming across the country. These Soviets represented the will of the people and often had more real power than the provisional government. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, skillfully used this opportunity. Lenin, who had been exiled, returned to Russia and immediately began calling for all power to the Soviets. He argued that the provisional government was weak and that only the Soviets could truly represent the people. The Bolsheviks gained more and more support, especially among the working class and soldiers, promising an end to the war, redistribution of land to peasants, and control of factories by workers. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks, with the support of armed workers and soldiers, launched an armed uprising. They seized key government buildings in Petrograd with relatively little resistance. This event, known as the October Revolution, effectively overthrew the provisional government and brought the Bolsheviks to power. It was a swift, decisive move that changed the course of Russian history forever. With the Bolsheviks now in control, Russia quickly underwent radical changes. Lenin immediately pulled Russia out of World War I, signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which gave up a large amount of Russian territory but fulfilled his promise of peace. Land was taken from wealthy landowners and distributed among the peasants. Factories were put under the control of workers' committees. The new government, however, faced huge challenges. Not everyone supported the Bolsheviks. Many different groups, including former Tsarist officers, liberals, and other socialist parties, opposed their rule. This led to a brutal civil war that lasted from 1918 to 1922, pitting the Red Army, Bolsheviks, against the White Army, their opponents. Millions died from fighting, famine, and disease during this period. Despite the immense cost, the Red Army eventually won, solidifying Bolshevik power. In 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, was officially established, with Russia as its largest republic. This new state was based on communist principles, aiming to create a society without social classes, where the state controlled the economy and resources. The Russian Revolution had a profound and lasting impact. It introduced a new political and economic system that challenged the existing world order. It inspired communist movements around the globe and led to decades of ideological conflict, known as the Cold War, between the Soviet Union and Western capitalist countries. The revolution also demonstrated the power of popular discontent and the potential for radical change when people are pushed to their limits. It was a turning point, not just for Russia, but for the entire world, shaping the political landscape for the rest of the 20th century and beyond.
That was a really interesting story.
Yes, it was very dramatic.
So the Tsar was very powerful.
That's right. He had absolute power.
And people were very unhappy.
Yes, especially the poor farmers.
World War I made things much worse.
It caused a lot of suffering.
The Bolsheviks promised peace, land, and bread.
That was a very popular message.
They took power in October 1917.
It was a swift revolution.
Then there was a long civil war.
The Red Army eventually won.
The USSR was formed in 1922.
It changed the world.
So it had a huge impact.
Absolutely. It shaped the 20th century.
That was a great lesson.
I agree. Keep learning, Levelcasters.
That's all for today. Keep it up, and we'll see you in the next Levelcast lesson.